Welcome to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast, addressing all aspects of the digital enterprise, inspiring connection without boundaries and creation without limits. Thank you for tuning in. Here are your hosts, Tom Singer and Craig Brown.
Well, hello, and welcome back to, or if it's your first time, welcome to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Thanks for coming along on this journey of this podcast that we designed to be a resource for those who work in and around PLM. The Digital Enterprise Society is a forum for the exchange of ideas surrounding the tools, processes, and practices used across the product lifecycle. To learn more, visit digitalenterprisesociety.org. My name is Tom Singer, and I am the co-host of this show, along with Craig Brown, an industry veteran and former PLM leader at General Motors. Hey, Craig, how are you today?
I'm great. I had to give 2 speeches this morning, and now I'm ready to do some podcasts. This will be fun.
Craig and I have been for the last 3 or 4 days at ConX19, IPX's event, and Craig he did a breakout session. We've been recording podcasts with some of the other panelists and speakers and people who are here in attendance. And so I was the master of ceremonies. So Craig and I are usually talking via computer from other cities via Zoom. And yet for the last 4 days, I've had to sit next to him to do all these recordings.
Which is great. It's nice seeing your face.
There you go. All right. Well, each week we try to bring to this podcast some interesting interviews and other ideas that are going to help all of our listeners enhance and grow their careers. And today it's going to be great because we have Leigh Ringgold. Now, she is the configuration manager for PLM at Facebook. You guys have all heard of Facebook. We've got her sitting right here. So Leigh, welcome to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's very exciting.
So Leigh, what's your background? How did you get to be the senior configuration manager of PLM at Facebook? And what do you do in your current role?
Sure. I started back in the 80s, and it was blueprints, ask man type thing. I've seen the entire I guess we'd say digital transformation over the decades, and how you go from literally using paper with some, ERP type systems, back then MRP, into tools that help us manage, that actually changed processes dramatically. Because when it was manual, you had to really track things in a different order. And going through that at various companies, most notably, I was in core internet routers, Cisco, which was following the Stratacom acquisition, and into starting at Juniper Networks as a startup, 65th employees. So I set up what was known as PDM department.
Right.
It was very dynamic back in the .com days. It was really fun. It was an amazing company that did everything right as a startup, in my opinion. And I was able to take some time off for having my family. And when I went back in, more startup. And I did spend a very short time at Google, which was very interesting because it showed me a different way. It was the Street View group.
Interesting.
And that was my first look at using your own technology. It was the cameras for the Street View, but also flying in the plane, to get that.
Pictures.
And all the camera guys. And it was really interesting. I liked it. But I moved on to a startup. I think it was more stable than Google.
Really? Oh, okay.
I make good
Did
decisions.
you learn anything? Yeah, okay. Keep going.
So I did. It was 3 years. I'm going to be totally transparent. It was a rough startup. I learned a lot, and it was a great product, and it got me into storage, which when Facebook reached out to me and LinkedIn, I thought, oh, yeah, I'm going to go talk to them. Really exciting. And I really wanted to go to Facebook.
And was the Facebook advertisement for a PLM? Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah.
I just find this whole thing fascinating. I'm going to keep learning. Keep going.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it is a niche position, believe me.
Interesting.
And it was a recruiter that was, searching LinkedIn for particulars and found me. And when I started talking to her and the hiring manager, the culture there, I just loved it. And everything worked out. I was hired, and I was really joining a startup, even though it was Facebook. Our infrastructure was lean. It was new. We're very reliant on our ODMs. And we started a path to, yes, digital, but really process-wise to kind of grow the infrastructure team there.
Yeah, it's actually interesting you emphasize process. It's been a theme this week, especially this morning. We've talked about, it isn't always about technology. It's as much about process and the people side of this too. So talk a little bit about the people side of it. What surprised you or what satisfies you with these assignments at Facebook?
I would say the most rewarding part is the cross-functional collaboration there. Okay. It's pretty amazing, and we're all really open with each other. You don't try to hide anything, and my team that my manager, Noe Gonzalez, manages has really put together a diverse team and it's still a pretty lean team. It's 8 FTEs for all of infra at Facebook. And everybody has their own expertise. So I will rely heavily, because I'm more on the business process side, I'll rely heavily on our solutions architect for when I am trying to solve a problem, to rely on him to figure out the back end and how that'll flow. And working cross-functionally, whether it's with sourcing, supply chain, engineering, what we call MQEs, our manufacturing quality engineers.
Yep, right.
What we call IBOS is our service.
But help me there.
Yeah.
What does Facebook manufacture?
Okay, well, a lot of people don't realize because we're a software company. We have quite a bit of hardware. And what I like to say is we are managing in infra 4 different industries. In Facebook at whole, it's more like 6 because we add on Oculus and Building 8, which is commercial,
understood.
Consumer, excuse me. And so we partner with them, but they have their own PLM team because it's different pipelines and whatnot. Then corporate to manage everything that's in all the sites, which we train and are overseeing, but we don't execute.
So the hardware is servers and then the buildings they're in, and,
correct,
and all the a lot of them, because of the heat you generate, you need ways of managing all that. The bigger farm you have, the bigger server farm, the more this is actually a pretty hard job, right?
It's pretty amazing. I personally was introduced to the facilities operations side, which is the data center builds and maintenance, about 1.5 years ago, which was completely different and really interesting to me. They're working with general contractors. So we design and own our data centers for the most, 99%. So they're quite large. They're large landscape. A single building, if you were to lay the Empire State Building on its side, is that size. And just picture that just filled with compute and storage racks to manage. And then there's several at each site. And, working on 15 data centers. So it's quite a bit to manage for compute and storage. The next thing is network. And the network type devices, there's a top of rack switch that is considered network, but it sits on the compute and storage. So it then becomes part of that configuration and into the data center. Next, we have what we call IDC as infra data center. So as I'm saying, the build, the maintenance of it. So it's kind of funny to me, because coming from routers and storage and what have you, that it's buying forklifts or generators or So it's fun because you're working with different cross-functional teams that come from different backgrounds. And
becoming more like a car company, but never mind.
Exactly. Well, and it's fun because they do come from different businesses. A lot of them are from the military, which I just recently learned, and a great group of people. And lastly is our connectivity, our Facebook connectivity. And it is our traditionally internet.org initiative to connect the world. So those countries that cannot otherwise afford internet. So I've always managed those products, which are very diverse. because it depends on the landscape that it's going to support, whether it's Wi-Fi
or app applied. Yeah,
correct.
Wow.
So we have to know all of this, which each one of those brings different data points, different attribution, working with our ODMs, and our service team goes across all of those.
Okay.
And no matter what it is, at the end of the day, with the exception of Connectivity Labs, because we don't keep those products, we do a technology transfer, but all the other ones, we're consuming them.
So you mentioned the team structure and the cross-functional nature. One of the things I think is underestimated is how important the culture is of effective teams.
Yes.
But what are the 3 bits of best advice you'd give people? I mean, sometimes we're very different backgrounds, and it's hard to hear each other because we just don't understand. I mean, how do you deal with that? What are the 3 best practices for effective teams?
That's an excellent question for our space. First, I would say we have in infra, and it's probably throughout Facebook, but I'm most familiar with infra. We have a very complex vetting interviewing process to be sure. To me, it's on both sides. The person interviewing wants to be comfortable and happy with where they land.
The culture.
Exactly. And then and vice versa. So then once the individual is hired in, what we're doing, and we're making great strides in this, and my overall team is called SOE, which is Sourcing Operations Engineering. And I'm part of an initiative for what we call noobs, for our new employees, that we use something
where being a noob is a good thing.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And we don't want to just throw them into it, because there's a lot to learn. It's very diverse.
Orientation, at least, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And we use internally Workplace, which is our tool. It's similar to a Facebook, the traditional Facebook that's got all the pages, and we can chat and we can do this and that. So we're building out an operating model for new employees that they can start to learn, who are we, who are our cross-functional teams, and then they can go through week by week up to their first 3 months. If they're technical, if they're an engineer, they go off to something we call boot camp and learn all this stuff that I didn't learn because I'm not an engineer. But we're trying to give all the tools, because one of the pieces of advice you're asking about, myself included, I've been in this industry a long time. And when I came in, I thought, I'm going to just really be able to help them out. And I'm going to come in, I'm going to do this and this and this. And I started looking at some things and like, why are we doing it this way? But it's because we're consuming, it's because how we grew, and it works. So the piece of advice is, before you make an assumption on something, find out why we did it.
Yeah, this is really good. I lots of young folks, especially if they're really bright and really aggressive, don't think they need to do that, right? And then they realize sometimes it's collateral damage they cause, because there are some really smart people that aren't near as maybe aggressive, and it is important they reach out. I've always thought that when you get into a new culture, you need a mentor. You need somebody who can show you the ropes, kind of. But also, the company's really good at something. That's why it's a successful company. You really don't want to come in and just disrupt all that. That doesn't help you at all.
Right. And it's not, we all were at different companies, so it's great to draw on that experience.
Right.
One thing I was just sharing.
It's hard when you're new, because somebody's got to guide you. Somebody's got to be your navigator.
Well, it is. And it's interesting you're asking this in this time, because we are starting up so we also have a PLM support team that's a contingent worker contractor force, and we're bridging out to Austin for that. So I'm currently bringing we're currently bringing in that team, and I've been training them. Okay. So what I'm saying is, because we're all from product companies, right? It's having to put in your mind, for me, just because I'm really visual, I share with them, look, when you hear about our capacity planning team that has to calculate quarter by quarter how many compute and storage racks we need in all of those data centers, it's crazy.
Which then drives energy, which then screws up the power grid.
Exactly. Maybe I should have said exactly. And then the power is different, based on North America. And so it's very, very complex. And it can seem a lot like vaporware to a new person coming in that role, because these folks are going to do very tactical work, which is extraordinarily important. So what I said is, and what I did for probably about my first year and a half, is I would equate things to a product company. So to me, when they determine what compute and storage racks, they're doing a calculation and coming up with basically a SKU, like a price list that a product management team would do in marketing.
Right.
So picture it that it's coming in to us to build a configuration.
Yeah.
And then if it's our fleet that has to manage things, well, it's kind of like a regular customer support, but in product companies, they then ship. But we do need to know when it comes back to repair it. But we take it a step further, because say a hard drive fails, we have to know in the fleet, in our service team, they have to know exactly what this hard drive is, who it's from, which ODM it was, how to swap it out, but then how to return it.
And help us with our audience. ODM is?
Oh, excuse me. So the original design manufacturer.
Oh, okay.
So we partner with them on the design and throughout the design. And then here's another thing that's different at Facebook to me. Our bills of material aren't what I call completely blown out. So for an example, if we have a PC board, at most companies, you've got your passives and everything. And we don't need those part numbers because we don't purchase them and we don't repair them.
Right.
So the ODM has that level.
Okay. So that, if you will, you subcontract to these ODMs, right?
Right. And
so you have the higher BOM, the high level configuration, and you're counting on the suppliers to have the detailed BOM. And that's very similar to lots of people on the calls, that whether you're car guys and you're buying a computer from somebody that goes in a car, or you're an airplane guy and you buy a seat from one of the seat manufacturers, right?
Correct. And you don't need to know what you
don't need to know the materials. You just need to know that it meets the performance requirements, right?
Yes.
So that's very interesting. Now you mentioned before we got started about this notion that you use your own tools, and I think you almost mentioned it earlier. Could you describe that? I mean, one of the things that's really frustrating as an OEM is getting tools that you find out you're the first one to really use them, or to use them in a certain way. It sounds like at Facebook you might be using Facebook.
When I first started there, we did use Facebook for our communication, our regular old Facebook. And it's been about 2 years, I would say, that we use Workplace, and other companies can use it too. I mean, it is a tool, and it's meant to be, you're separated from, like, if I go to my regular Facebook, if I click where it says my name and picture, and there's a little drop down, then it will be my work account. And then I click on that, and now I'm in Workplace.
Okay.
And we even have things like dogs at Facebook. So we all post a picture of our dog, and things like that. But the main portion of it is, that's how administration communicates with us. It's not an email. It's, we have different groups for, company FYI or what have you. If Mark's going to do an all hands or he does these Q&A sessions, and you can go onto a poll and say, oh, I'd like these questions answered. But then more specifically to our work is we'll have groups, like we have a PLM group, and anybody interested in our PLM can subscribe to it. And we have an announcement to make. We'll put it on there, and then it goes into their feed.
Interesting.
Yeah. So ours, you can do secret groups, so it's still the same. So if you need to talk about anything that only pertains to Facebook employees, something like that.
Yeah, but what I like about it is you're experiencing at least a high level the user experience that's going out to all the rest of us that use Facebook.
Yes.
And I think when you uncover something about either a better way to work or even an awkward way to work, you can then quickly address it. The people that experience it are actually the people that can influence the developers. In some cases, probably is the developers, right?
Right, and that's on target. That we actually remember, what was it, about 3 years ago? There used to only be the like button, and then they did the little face and then the little heart and this and that. So we tested that on our Facebook pages for, I feel like it was months.
Bravo.
Before anybody else did it, and then we gave feedback.
This is excellent. I'm convinced companies that do that end up with sustained products that last for a long time, applications, products, services, whatever, right?
Right.
It's the folks that build something and kind of throw it over the wall at consumers and then lower prices and just assume you use it. I mean, I actually, maybe many of those companies don't exist anymore, right? It doesn't matter whether you're doing cars or applications on computer networks. It's all the same, right?
Correct.
If you get out of touch with the way people actually use the thing you're producing, then you'll probably go out of business. So it's interesting. So you've been here at the IPX Connex 19 this week.
Yes.
What did you think?
I thought it was great. And I was here, there were 3 of us here from Facebook, and all 3 of us have different backgrounds. One being our manager that has a wide industry network there. The other being the solutions architect I mentioned. So he's more tools related. So he has seen things from the other end of it,
Sure.
And then myself being more the worker bee business side. And so with those 3 different perspectives, we all just really got a lot out of it. The IPX guys are great. We just finished our initial evaluation, and we've attended other conferences, which we've also really benefited from. But it was very nice. It's a nice feel. The different discussions, and you can choose on some of the breakouts what you want to hear.
Sure.
But the bigger piece was just being able to chat with people.
Sure.
And I chatted last night with members from Bose, and it's just nice to hear how somebody else is doing it, or somebody in, pharmaceuticals or this or that, and how you have common ground and similar problems. But I do really appreciate the transparency. Erica from Microsoft was great.
Yeah. We had Erica in your seat a few days ago.
Great.
I suspect we'll publish them a few weeks away from each other.
Yeah,
but
right.
we release one a week, and we just, Tom and I took advantage of being here to talk with several of you, and you both opened my eyes to, folks like Facebook and Microsoft need PLM leadership just like General Motors. So,
right.
So it was interesting. So with that, I too enjoyed the week, and it's been interesting, and keep the learnings coming, and I hope maybe we see each other next year.
I really
see what they
appreciate
do
it.
that.
Yes.
Tom, back to you.
So Leigh, before I let you go, one of the things I always like to ask the people who we interview on the show is for a little bit of career advice for our listeners. Because a lot of people, maybe they're younger in their career, they're coming up, and they've fallen into a PLM, path. What advice would you have for somebody as far as how to navigate their career from here?
Being that I mentioned I came up back in the day and just kind of evolved with it. What's nice is these days, PLM is starting to be offered in universities, and they're realizing, to the point that it's across all industries. I used to actually be naive enough. I was mentioning this the other day. Years ago, I thought, I'm always have to live in Silicon Valley because it's all high tech. That's ridiculous. You can work anywhere because PLM is everywhere and it's in every product. Learning and getting back again to that cross-functional piece. PLM is the core in the businesses. We're right in between, technical program engineering, technical program management, process engineering, sourcing, service. No matter what company it is, it's going to be a similar landscape. So to just understand their needs so that you produce good quality work for their support.
Well, Leigh, thank you so much for joining us here on the Digital Enterprise Society podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Hey, and everyone who listened in, join us next week for more thoughts, ideas, and information in and around product lifecycle management. The Digital Enterprise Society is the place for the exchange of ideas around digital manufacturing tools. Check us out at digitalenterprisesociety.org.
You've been listening to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Learn more about what you've heard here today at digitalenterprisesociety.org. Join us again next week